1996's Space Jam is my favorite movie of all time. So when I heard the rumors going around that there was going to be a sequel coming, I was extremely excited, and I couldn't wait to see the movie, and then I saw it, and I loved it. Sorry, I did. I loved the movie. Now, of course, come on. I didn't love everything about it. I'm going to talk about everything I loved and everything I hated about Space Jam 2: A New Legacy, and I'm going to try to convince you all in this video that it's a good movie, and the hate it's been getting is like insanely overrated, and I just want to try to explain my position. And I don't want to do an extremely long intro, because screw that. Now, before we talk about the very beginning of the movie, I just want to very quickly say that Space Jam 2 does have certain parallels and scenes that are nods to scenes and stuff that happened in the original, but I don't view them as exact copies. It's just inspiration, and really, I view Space Jam 2 as doing an excellent job of trying to make a new story that felt different than the original movie. But I just noticed all these scenes when I was watching the movie that reminded me of that moment in Space Jam and that moment in Space Jam. So I'm going to be talking about all that stuff throughout this review. Let's just get right into the review. Grab some carrots, maybe some carrot juice, and let's hop right in to my review of Space Jam: A New Legacy. The film starts off with the new Warner Brothers logo that looks pretty cool, and we can faintly hear sounds of sneakers running on a basketball court and dribbling in a crowd. And the magic I felt in the theater hearing that, I was like, wow, get ready. I'm about to watch Space Jam 2. It was it was a magical way to start the film. Like, finally, we are here. Let's rock and roll. So I like that intro. The first scene of the movie is we see a young LeBron as a kid talking to his mom, which makes me think of the original movie, how it parallels the beginning of the original, where young Michael is with his father, only this time young LeBron is with his mother. Then we get introduced to Malik, who later becomes his manager, and he's his best friend. And it's explained that the film at the beginning takes place in 1998. Already that made me excited, because it's like, wow, okay, so 2 years after the events of the original movie. That is awesome. And I always thought that 1998 was like the greatest year of the 90s, so what a great way to start the film. I mean, it starts off with familiar territory of the original, because it's from that era, Malik gives LeBron his new Game Boy Color, and we get to see him play Bugs Bunny's Crazy Castle. And I don't know why the graphics changed. I thought that was really weird and stupid. But, I don't know, whatever. And another, minor complaint was that it wasn't a Game Boy Color. I mean, all of us old schoolers know that. That was just an original Game Boy. You guys really couldn't get an actual Game Boy Color when Malik said he just got the new color one? Really, guys? Really? But it's just a minor complaint, Anyway, LeBron loses the game, then his coach is talking to him outside, and this does remind me of the opening to Space Jam, the beginning, where Michael is talking to his dad, and his dad is supporting his future career for playing basketball. I don't know where LeBron's father was, but clearly there was probably some kind of issue with his real-life dad, so his coach was like his father at the time, supporting him. And then LeBron throws the Game Boy in the trash, and I know all of us who play video games are like, oh my god, how could you do that? Anyway, we all know why that happens if you've seen the movie. It's part of the storyline, and it's not a bad way to start the film. Next, we're brought to the intro of the film, the big intro, where they show highlights of LeBron's career over the years and how he became like a superstar of basketball. And it is like the intro to the original Space Jam, where they show the highlights of Jordan's career becoming a star. Sadly, in my opinion, this new version, this new intro of LeBron's highlights, the way it was done, I was disappointed with it. It was a letdown. First of all, let's talk about the song they play. This song is like whatever, but why isn't it the Space Jam theme? Really, guys? It's a new Space Jam movie. You should introduce the movie with the Space Jam theme song. At least do a remix of it from the original. The song has to say Space Jam in the song. That's what should be playing here. So that's a mistake. And another thing is the editing done in this new LeBron intro. It's nowhere near as cool or as awesome as the editing in the original. The original was incredible. It blows your mind. And even people that hate the original Space Jam, they love that intro of showing Jordan's highlights because of all the flashing and the colors and the different text they use and everything, you know? Whereas this just seemed like, for the most part, it was just showing footage of LeBron's career. They had little moments, and I do emphasize little moments where they have some drawings of like LeBron and they'll like edit it into the real footage and they got some neon lights going on and that was pretty cool. It was decently cool, but it's really not, it's not that good. Like that's kind of cool, you know, but there should have been way more of that. It just seemed like they were trying to save money and that pisses me off. So anyway, the montage of Jordan in the original Space Jam was better. Now this next part is an extremely minor complaint. I love getting nitpicky and talking about the stuff in films, but unlike other asshole critics, I'm not going to let it ruin the movie for me. I have to acknowledge when something is a nitpick or something minor. And other critics never do that. So I'm not going to be like those assholes. So when I talk about something that annoys me, I'm going to talk about how it's pretty minor, you know? Anyway, this next thing is a minor complaint. When they show the logo for the new Space Jam, the background is just black. Come on. It should have stuff in the background of the logo. And when they showed the logo in the original Space Jam, they had like the sea of people, basketball fans in the background. And it made it seem more like an event. Like, oh, everyone's supposed to be watching this or something. It was just more exciting. But yeah, that's just something I didn't like to see. But I kind of like what the song says right before they go into the movie, where I think the person says, "We're clear to take off." That was pretty cool. Not bad. Now we cut to LeBron's mansion, where his two sons are practicing basketball. Well, one of his sons is, and Dom, who is one of the main characters of the film, is playing his video game he's created called Dom Ball. One, again, extremely minor thing I noticed, I don't know if any of you guys noticed this, but the device he's playing it on outside, it says Wii on it, but it's spelled differently. I don't know, it's kind of lame, but it's a little humorous. Again, it's nothing important, but just something I kind of noticed. So clearly we can tell that Dom is not into playing basketball. LeBron shows up, you know, very stoic, pretty annoyed with Dom. He doesn't understand him. I think the way they told the story of LeBron and Dom's issue in the film, for the most part, it was pretty great. And it was also relatable. But I heard someone say that the original Space Jam didn't need to teach a lesson, and it wasn't preachy, really. It was just Jordan going on an adventure with the Looney Tunes and everything, and then it was him saving the day. And that was cool, and it's like it didn't matter that it was a kid's film. It didn't have to have some kind of big lesson. But the original Space Jam does have a lesson because Jordan taught everyone that it wasn't the secret stuffed water that made them good. It was them that made them good. But still, even though we didn't need to have this lesson in this movie with LeBron and his son, it's still relatable, and it's still okay. And like I said, for the most part, it's done well. But here's the parts about it that bother me. LeBron's first scene is a bit problematic. I get that for the storyline, LeBron has to be the asshole father in this scene, right? Right. But they make him a little too much of a jerk. That's not good when you're trying to make one of the main characters of the film a likable character. I don't know. It just, like, we get it. We get that there's an issue between Dom and LeBron. They didn't have to make him this much of a jerk. They could have just made him like a little bit of a jerk, you know? It just kind of came across as being, I don't know, a little too uncomfortable for a Space Jam kind of movie. I don't mind if that happens with other things, but yeah, I don't know, there's just something about it that it just went a little too far. But like I said, for the most part, I think it's done well. LeBron's wife and daughter come out, and she says, "Boys, I got food ready for you to eat." Now, I know, again, this is a minor thing, but for some reason it made me laugh because it reminded me, actually, of the original, where Jordan walks into his house with his wife, and his mother or their nanny or whatever is cooking dinner or lunch or whatever. Jordan's like, "What are you cooking?" And she's like, "Chicken." And he's like, "Chicken and what?" "Chicken and collard greens." And he's like, "All right, I could use a good meal." And then she laughs. Ha 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 ha. I don't know, I thought that was weird that I made that connection. Just that scene where she's like, "Boys, a dinner or lunch or whatever," that just reminded me of that moment in the original, where it's like it's kind of the same thing, because in the original, Jordan was with his wife in that scene, and here LeBron's with his wife. It's a minor thing, but I found it kind of amusing that it just reminded me of that. And both of those scenes are kind of at the beginning of each film, right? So anyway, LeBron and his wife have a boring bedroom scene where she talks to LeBron about how he needs to be a better father, and we get that. We kind of got that from the last scene. The bedroom scene is pretty unnecessary, but it was very, very short, so whatever. Next, the camera takes us to the Warner Brothers lot, where it dives into the studio in the secret building, where it takes us into a computer, and we see the Warner Brothers serververse. Pretty cool the way it was shot, and it's basically like how at the beginning of the original, the camera takes us away from Earth, past the moon, and brings us all the way to the inside of Moron Mountain. They're basically showing where the evil villain's lair is for both films. Like the camera's zooming in, and here you are. Now you're going to see everything from the villain's perspective, and that's kind of cool. We come to the villain of the film, Al-G Rhythm, performed by Don Cheadle. Well, you either love this actor or you hate him, and that kind of makes me think of this character in the film. You either love this character or you hate him. I grew to love the character as the film went on. I think Don Cheadle is the best actor in this movie, by far. I felt like Al-G Rhythm's character had things about him that were interesting and a little bit relatable. He's just so dedicated to playing this character in this movie. He plays it very seriously, which is really cool. I thought he was awesome in the movie. And I can understand why people didn't like him in the movie, but I don't know. You have to work with the film a little bit, guys. Now it's time for me to talk about things that I noticed in Space Jam 2 that were improvements over the stuff in the original Space Jam. Yeah, that's right. Actual improvements. Even though I think Space Jam, the original, is a masterpiece, there are actually some things that Space Jam 2 does better. For instance, my first example is our main villain. Yes, we all love Swackhammer. He was funny, he was a greedy character. Then we have Al-G Rhythm for the sequel. Al-G Rhythm is a better written villain character. He has more things going on in his mind. He's a deeper character. He has a dark past, and it's led him to becoming the kind of person he is in the film. You can tell that there was stuff in his past that haunted him, and he was just a more written villain. Whereas Swackhammer in the original, even though he was charming, he basically just wanted money. He just cared about greed and everything. That's all he really was about. So, from a writing perspective, Al-G was a better villain. They were both great villains, though. But anyway, that's just one thing I noticed. Al-G Rhythm has these awesome monologues in the movie that I loved, especially the first time hearing them. Because again, it goes back to what I was saying before. You believe he's actually this character. Anyway, we see Al-G looking at screens of LeBron, showing how important he is and everything. This is a parallel to the original where Swackhammer's looking at the TV screens and looking at the problem of Moron Mountain. Only this time it's futuristic hologram screens and not the old school 90s fatback TV screens that Swackhammer is looking at in the security room in Moron Mountain. But anyway, Al-G's just noticing how remarkable LeBron is. And this film kisses LeBron's ass way too much. And yeah, the original Space Jam kissed Jordan's ass a lot too. So, however, both LeBron and Jordan had their own, title, their nickname that the fans know them each by. With Michael Jordan, he was known as the Prince of the Air. Everything with air. Whereas LeBron was known as the King. In both Space Jam 1 and 2, they say these phrases, these nicknames for both of them, multiple times in both movies. However, they call LeBron the King way more in Space Jam 2 than they call Jordan his airness or something air in the original. So LeBron is being way too full of himself, which becomes annoying to audiences. I get it that, this whole idea of them making a sequel to Space Jam was kind of his idea in the first place. The only reason I loved that he wanted to do this was because he said he loved the original movie. And anyone who loves the original Space Jam is a friend of mine. So, I don't really know what I think about LeBron as a person, but the fact that he said he loved the Looney Tunes and Space Jam as a kid, and he said he wanted to take time with Warner Brothers to make this a good movie, I respect him for that. But it's especially noticeable in this scene how many times they say the word king, where Al-G is going to the screens and it says, King James, 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 James! King James! You hear the announcer. And then Al-G holds the hologram in his hand and he says, he's more than an athlete or whatever, or a god. He's a king. And it's like, come on, enough. We get it. Okay, he's the fucking king. You don't have to keep talking about how he's the king. That's one thing that the original Space Jam has over the sequel, is that whole nickname thing. It was overused in the second movie. Even still, though, even though it can get annoying throughout the movie, it's sort of a minor complaint. It's not that terrible. You know, like that is not something in the film that ruins the movie. It's not that terrible, okay? We're introduced to Pete, who is something. I don't know what Pete's supposed to be. He looks kind of like a light bulb. I think he represents like a computer circuit or something. Let me know in the comments if you are able to know or figure out what Pete is supposed to be, because it's never explained in the film, and I thought that after this movie there would be all these fans talking about what Pete is supposed to be, but since everyone hates this movie, no one gives a shit. Anyway, even though I thought Algae Rhythm was entertaining in this movie, there are moments where he tries a little too hard to be funny, and it just comes across as being cringy. While there are some things that are cringy that can be hilarious, but it's only funny if it's done well. And sometimes the jokes in this movie land, and sometimes they don't. But there are things that I found funny in the movie. And some of Algae Rhythm's jokes were a little bit funny, but they weren't like, oh yeah, wow, that was so funny. It wasn't like that. But they tried. Again, this is not something that ruins the movie. It's not. I did kind of feel like Algae Rhythm's character at moments, he was supposed to be so bad that he was good with his humor. He just seemed like a very memeable kind of character to me. Like after the movie, just like with Pete, I thought there was going to be all these memes about Algae Rhythm, and people were going to find him so humorous and kind of charming in like an ironic way. But nope. People hated the movie, and there is not a lot of memes for Algae Rhythm, and I really thought there was going to be. But whatever, anyway. Algae constructs a plan and sends an email to Sarah Silverman. We'll talk more about her later. The next scene, we see Dom working on his special video game called Dom Ball. LeBron walks in. He checks out the game he made, and it's kind of cool. It's extremely impressive that someone of this age is able to make this kind of video game. The game crashes, and it's a pretty decent scene. It's done pretty well. One thing I noticed that you only realize later on in the film is that at the beginning of this scene, we see Dom using this new technology to create the Goon Squad, or it'll become the Goon Squad later. I thought that was a really cool touch, because we see him with the spider, developing the brow and everything. It's just like showing the future villains of the film. I like that. It's a little thing in the film that was pretty damn cool. The only thing I didn't like about the scene was one little moment. It was when LeBron dabs when he leaves his room. That was like super cringe. That should have just not have been there. Other than that tiny moment, the rest of the scene was a good scene. We now come to what I would argue is the most important scene in the whole film. Basically sets up the rest of the film and what to expect. So they go into a board meeting room. They show LeBron this new video project they want him to sign off on. We see his manager there, Malik, who's now, grown up with him. Dom is there. Sarah Silverman, some other video game person. And they watch the video. I think it's kind of a cool, interesting video. And Dom loves it. He can't get enough of it. And LeBron hates it. He despises it. And then afterwards, so LeBron basically tells them this idea is stupid. This is a terrible idea. No one's going to like this. I really don't like this, and I don't want to have anything to do with this. But Dom is like the opposite. The real moment of this scene has been pulled over most critics' minds. People do not understand what the real point of this scene is supposed to be. LeBron's reaction to the video they show, where they put LeBron in all the Warner Brothers stuff they own, and the fact that he hates it, that's the cynical critic. Those are the people that hate Space Jam 1 and 2, especially the sequel. All these YouTubers, I hate this movie. A lot of the complaints about Space Jam 2 are about how LeBron is in the Warner Brothers properties, and he goes to each property, and people think that's really stupid and really sleazy and terrible. It's a terrible idea. LeBron's reaction to that is supposed to be all those critics. LeBron is basically all the people that hated the movie. What I love about the scene is that Dom loves it. Dom is more creative than LeBron. LeBron is too cynical in this scene. He's too adult. The whole point of the scene is basically trying to convince the viewer that don't take the rest of this film too seriously. Just enjoy the ride. Don't be super cynical like LeBron is. Don't be like that, because this is a Space Jam movie. This scene is trying to set up the premise for the rest of the film to try to convince you that this is going to be an enjoyable ride. It's not, don't overthink the fact that he's in all these properties and everything. That's what I think people don't get about this scene. I just hate that complaint that people make about this sequel, is that people are like, they shove way too many Warner Brothers properties in your face. And it's like Warner Brothers showing off what they own and everything. If you can recall, the original Space Jam did that too. It did that only with just the Looney Tunes characters, which you could argue makes the original cooler, because the original was all about just the Looney Tunes. But if you're like me and you love Warner Brothers, I don't just love the Looney Tunes, I also love Warner Brothers. And we already saw the original where it had every Looney Tune in it in the crowd. So this film is trying to be different. I think it was cool that they go to the different planets, and I know we're not there yet, but how they go to all the different series and we get to see the Looney Tunes in different environments. I thought it was fun. I thought it was cool. I thought it was interesting. And I thought it was done well. That's the thing. The original Space Jam, you can argue, has sleazy marketing stuff in it. And the same thing with the sequel. But I don't care if it's sleazy as long as it's fucking entertaining. And that's what it's supposed to be. It's a Space Jam movie. So the fact that this stuff is in it, it's like, the whole idea is that you're supposed to think it's cool. You're not supposed to be overly cynical about it like fucking LeBron. Because LeBron in this film is a dick. And you don't want to be like LeBron. You want to be like Dom and just have fun and enjoy the movie or whatever it is. The whole thing of the movie is that they're showing that LeBron has lost his way. He doesn't have that childlike wonderment in him anymore. And only through meeting the Looney Tunes, he starts to feel like a kid again. He starts to be happy again. This is basically what the film Christopher Robin was all about too, where Obi-Wan Kenobi was Christopher Robin, and throughout the film he softens up and he remembers how to be happy through Winnie the Pooh and the Friends. Same thing happens in this movie. Sorry if that was a spoiler, and I think in both films it's done really well. And it's a good lesson, too. Character development in the scene is awesome. When Al-G gets pissed at hearing what LeBron has to say about his ideas, and then Dom loves the ideas, and then Al-G relates to Dom. Because to Al-G, Dom is something that he never got to have in his childhood. He never had someone who supported him. And now he has someone else that thinks like him. And that was always the problem with Al-G, is that even though he was a super creative and interesting guy, he just didn't have anyone to support him in his life. And he let his creativity corrupt him from the inside. He was always a tortured soul. And so I think it's good character development. In this scene, we also see Malik being a little bit funny as a character. I'd like to talk about Malik a little bit here. I think that Malik is supposed to be the Stan of this movie. They're both the managers to the main basketball player, and they're both funny. I know, watching it, especially for the first time, you may not think Malik is really that funny. And the truth is that he's not really that funny, but he's a little bit funny. There are moments throughout the film where he made me chuckle, and I thought he was a charming character. He was nowhere near as charming or nowhere near as hilarious as Stan was in the original. Every line and every scene with Stan Podolak in the original Space Jam was gold. He was hilarious, and he was on Seinfeld. He was a funny guy, Wayne Knight. Now, Malik was a little bit funny throughout the film, and I just think it's interesting that they tried to recreate that. But my problem with this movie, and now I'll go into this, is that it did not have enough comedic actors in the movie. The original Space Jam had so many great comedians in it that made the film hilarious. Bill fucking Murray, Wayne fucking Knight, Charles fucking Barkley, Muggsy, those 5 NBA players from the original were all hilarious. They all had their funny moments. And they had the actress who was Deborah on Everybody Loves Raymond at the basketball game with the voice of Homer Simpson, and that was a cool cameo for adults. Now, as a kid, I didn't even know that. But as I grew up and I rewatched the original Space Jam, I'm like, oh my god, that's Deborah! And oh, that's Homer Simpson! How cool is that? Patricia Heaton, in that one scene where they're watching the basketball game and she's talking about the aliens in the raincoat, that she was funnier in that scene than Malik was in this entire sequel. And it's like, come on, you know? Where are the comedic actors in this movie? How come Bill Murray's not in it? Like you couldn't get Zach Galifianakis in it. No Will Ferrell cameo. No Shaq. Like where are the comedians? They are like severely lacking in this movie. That's one of the things that made the original so great, is that it had so many funny talent in it. This film does have two comedians in it. Don Cheadle, who's a little bit funny, and then the security guard was the same guy who was Black Jesus on Adult Swim. He was a little bit funny in his scene later with Malik, but it was a very short scene, and again, it's like this movie has two comedians in it. It's supposed to be like 7 or 8 really funny, hilarious comedians in it, and we don't have that in the sequel. So that's a problem. Also, Sarah Silverman, right? She's in the film, but she doesn't say or do anything that's funny. I mean, I never thought she was funny. I mean, she's really cute, but she doesn't even try to be funny, though. So if they were thinking, oh, we'll just, Sarah Silverman is funny, and so we'll use her in the movie. If they were thinking that, then why didn't they have her try to be funny? What was the point then? Sarah Silverman's role in this movie could have been played by any female actress, if that was the case. So then why hire a comedian to just be just like a kind of a normal character in this movie? It kind of doesn't make sense. When Dom leaves the room and they have a big fight, father-son fight, Algae Rhythm screams, breaks the glass, or the digitized glass, and he's like, huh? Who does he think he is, huh? Mocking me? That was awesome. I felt that. It was good. It was really good tension. It was cool. I enjoyed that scene where we get some emotion from one of the actors in this movie. Like, Don Cheadle in this movie is not a piece of plywood. He is really into this character. So it's interesting. Even if you don't like him as a character, I do think it's interesting that they really tried that, because that's what you have to have in a movie that if you want a movie to be compelling, you have to have actors in the film that want to really do a job in the film, and they like show it in the film and with a lot of force and energy. And it's good. It's a good passionate scene that Algae Rhythm has in that moment. Continued in part 2.